those of you who keep that voice is always so creepy. It throws me off every time. And for those of you who keep coming back to these meetings, thank you for your continued commitment to this work. We, again, cannot do this work without you. It takes the entirety of us to do this. So you all are very busy humans, so we recognize this is one more thing, but thank you for making this one more thing part of your very busy schedules. So do we want to do announcements first before we break out into little breakout rooms for quick introductions? Do folks have any announcements? I would ask that they be brief. But again, any announcements are welcome. Jill, go for it.
Just naming that the Oregon Suicide Prevention Conference is in October in Ashland, and a lot of really amazing people are going to be there and presenting. And I'm advocating for some karaoke. That hasn't happened yet, but you know, the dream lives. And so we'll put the link to that in the chat. Sign up if you can. There's some limited scholarships, particularly for those who are folks with lived experience. And we just sent out a link yesterday to a select invite list around a pre-conference option for post-vention planning. So if you did not receive that and you are interested in it, please let me know. I'll put my email in the chat and I'll send you that invite as well. That is a free option. The conference is not.
Thanks, Jill. I hope to see many of your faces at the conference. Any other announcements?
Did you want to acknowledge the potential power outages?
Yeah, so I was gonna leave the room for other folks to chat. So, but yeah, I just want to bring into the room, if you didn't hear me say this earlier, that we are once again as a state under the threat of wildfires and potential power outages. So if you all are here, I shouldn't make any assumptions, but you have power where you are or where you've moved to. But I just want to say that I hope that we can all get through this weekend safely and with as much power as is possible while keeping people safe. So please just kind of hold each other in some safe spaces this weekend as we get through this another high temp and high humidity and high winds. I also want to say welcome to September. September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. So this is also another big time for us to be celebrating the work that you all as individuals and your systems and your agencies are doing, as well as the larger work that the Alliance is doing. So thank you for that as well. Gordon, go ahead.
Yes, it's a little off topic, but I think it's really interesting. Today is the 80th anniversary of the Japanese attempt to bomb Brookings, Oregon. And our suicide task group, VA, is going to be at a video and a presentation of the sword by the gentleman that attempted.
We lost them. Gordon, we lost you. Gordon has, I think for the past meeting, had some internet trouble as well. So hopefully they will pop back. Gordon, if you can hear me, maybe finish your thought in the chat, but we did hear what you had to say about the anniversary. So thank you for bringing that into the space. Any other announcements before we move on? Laura Rose, go for it.
I was just going to say it's also National Recovery Month, and there was a wonderful turnout in Portland and Washington State, Hands Across the Bridge, showing people recovery is possible. And recovery is a broad term. You know, there's all kinds of addictions. And I also think of recovery from the struggle with suicide and mental health. Today, they're having a parallel event in Marion County at Marion County Hands Across the Bridge. Expected turnout over 800 people. And I'm really excited we get to share Pure Galaxy's new 988 cards. I got to share them with my daughter's school. A couple visitors last week or earlier this week as they were getting set up, and they were begging for the cards. They really appreciated them. And they're also next weekend going to have this event with youth in the park, youth and young adults. And I thought it was really amazing. They were telling us the homeless and runaway youth and former homeless and runaway youth were able to get together, and they have received a huge grant in the multi-millions of dollars that's going to be used for transitional housing, shelter, community drop-in center programs, and more. So go youth.
Woohoo! Thank you, Laura Rose. All right, any other announcements before we move on? Julie, go for it.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the right place. I'm looking at the agenda. I'm not sure that we have this in there, so didn't know whether I should give an update on one of the committee activities. Gally, is that coming later in the agenda, do you think?
I don't think we have that.
Yeah, so I'll just briefly, if I can.
But go for it, because it's always
Yeah.
great to hear about what our committees are up to. So go for it.
Yay. So anyway, workforce committee, which thank you. I see my compatriots here on the call. We've been working on a follow-up bill to our success from the last long session of getting behavioral health workers connected to continuing education for suicide prevention. And of course, you know, our ultimate goal is to have all sorts of health providers take training and be confident and competent in suicide assessment and screening and referral and brief treatment. So we have been working hard on the bill, and right now we're kind of, you know, in that kind of crunch period of figuring out where we're going forward, and we're making some pivots to try to make sure that we have the capacity to give meaningful training to the medical health care workforce, as well as listening to all the wonderful solutions that they themselves might be coming up with. So we're in this, that sounds kind of vague because we are pivoting, but we are talking to lots of our allies in the state legislature and hope to have a bill that we might have a placeholder bill to start with as we're exploring some of our options. So just want everyone to know. If you have any questions, please contact me or Annette or Don Erickson or Stephanie Willard or anyone, Tanya, anyone on the committee. Well, Tanya, sorry, you weren't at the last meeting, so don't talk to Tanya because everything is moving.
Thank you, Julie. Again, workforce is one of the many committees that are doing amazing work. So thank you to Julie and Dawn and the rest of the workforce crew who are really pushing what is a very large boulder uphill, and you keep pushing it. And so thank you for continuing to push it. All right, folks, we are going to be breaking out into small groups just for a few minutes as a way to get to know each other a little bit better. And then I'll come back and kind of review what we're going to do today. And again, the small groups are just really intended for people to see each other a little up close and get to know each other a little bit better. And so there's a slide on the screen about what we're asking you to do. Just be yourself. And this meeting is really focused on schools today. So the question that we're going to be asking is going to be around Addie's Act. So Jen, are you ready to take us away into breakout groups?
Yeah.
All right, be prepared, folks, to be swished away. And then I'll see you in just a few minutes in the big group.
Oh, I guess I have to hit open rooms, not just start. So sorry about that. Yep, I'm ready.
It's okay.
There you go. You're good. It's a good thing that we don't care about that couch. Oh, that was just recorded because of how he's digging on the.
We needed more time. Hi, folks. Welcome back. Do we have everyone? Looks like it. All right, welcome back. Hope that you got to know your fellow Alliance colleagues and members just a little bit more. We have amazing folks in this group, so it's always nice to chat with folks when we can. So a little bit about what we're going to do today. So the main thing that's going to be really different is that we are going to be slowing down our agenda a bit. We have historically packed our agenda very, very full because we have lots of things to do and lots of things to accomplish. But what has ended up happening is that has not left a lot of time for discussion or disagreements or whatever is going to come up around this work, which we welcome. So we have decided that we are going to basically pad our agenda a little bit more, so there will be more opportunity for discussion and the things that need to come up. We want to make sure that all voices have a space here, even the voices of dissent. So please keep your feedback coming because that feedback came from the satisfaction survey. So we heard that from you all and we have adjusted accordingly. So yeah, quick review of today's agenda, which Jen, thank you for putting on the screen. We still have lots to accomplish today. Again, this particular meeting will be focused on schools and have a pretty amazing lineup on deck for you to learn even more about what's happening around the state to support schools and in our schools. All right. Did I skip over group agreements or Jen's prompting me, thank you, the equity statement. Okay, perfect. So thank you to our equity committee who developed this equity statement and the executive team has approved this. Does anyone want to take a risk and read this statement as we start our meeting? Don't be shy. There's 53 of you in here.
I can read it.
Thank you, Jake.
To achieve our vision, we acknowledge the impact of white supremacy, institutionalized racism, and all forms of oppression. The Alliance endeavors to make Oregon a place where suicide reduction and prevention is achieved for people for all ages, races, ethnicities, abilities, gender identities, sexual orientations, socioeconomic status, nationalities, and geographic locations.
Thank you, Jake. Appreciate it very much. Okay, folks, the only business that we have really we have a consent agenda basically. So voting on our June quarterly meeting minutes. It's a big mouthful. So again, for a reminder to folks in the room, and we'll talk about this in a moment when we talk more about voting, but this would be a time that it would be lovely to entertain a motion to pass those June quarterly minutes and a second. And if there's no discussion or concerns or question, we do not need to take a vote. Those minutes will pass.
So
But we do.
Gordon Clay.
Thank you, Gordon. We have a motion from Gordon to pass those June minutes. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Any discussion about the June quarterly meeting minutes? All right, those are approved. Thank you, folks.
And Gally, I'll just jump in here and tell you that I've learned that people did receive an email or letter. So we have our new members are able to vote today.
Oh,
So
well,
it's great.
okay. That is amazing. I'm seeing Christina nodding her head. Yay, that's amazing. We weren't sure if you had received letters yet. Okay, so again, I'll back up then because I want to say official welcome to you all as new members who have received your letter from the Oregon Health Authority to
You just lost.
Is that me or is that galley slowing?
I think that's Gali.
Oh no.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, folks. I've had some internet trouble. Now you all get to vote, which is amazing. So I'm going to hand it off, Annette and Jen, I'm going to hand it off to one of you around, we're going to be doing some voting on the Alliance Chair, which is the position I'm currently sitting in, and as well as Co-Chair, which is the position that Ryan Price is currently sitting in. And to take the awkwardness out of voting, me leading a vote for my own position, I'm going to pass this over to our amazing staff, Annette and Jen. Take it away for voting.
Great. Well, thank you. We have two people that have been nominated for being chair. And what the model is that we have as an alliance is a co-chair model where we really are trying to intentionally kind of build sustainability so that there's somebody who's maybe chairing and leading and a co-chair who is learning and can step in, et cetera. And so, for example, before Gali became chair of the alliance, she worked with David Westbrook and she was the co-chair. David was taking the lead, but she was really very much part of that leadership team and felt like by the time she stepped into this role, she had begun to get a feel for sort of, it's a fairly big and interesting and complicated beast, wonderful, beautiful beast that the alliance is that we try and move forward. So Gali had Ryan Price, who had the co-chair position up to this time, has had to step down from that because of he now has a national role with the Association of AFSP, with the Association for Suicide Prevention. And so the sort of our order that we had set up, Ryan will not be able to step into the role of leading the alliance. Fortunately, we have had Charlotte Lumbee say that she would be open to being in that co-chair position. So we've received nominations for Gali, who has offered to continue in her role for another 2 years to keep that continuity going, and Charlotte Lumbee, who is the co-chair of our Transitions of Care Committee. She's also a nurse, has worked in ICU, been very passionate advocate around suicide prevention. I'll say just a couple words about Gali, who you all got to see in action here today, but that Gali is also the suicide prevention coordinator for Clackamas County and really one of the founding members of the Alliance. And so today we are going to vote on each of them. So we'll pause for each one. And a reminder that if you're not officially a member of the Alliance, you are not able to vote. We put the list up here of who the members are. We're okay for quorum. And so let's start. I think what I need from the floor is somebody to officially ask for a vote on Gali Murray continuing as chair for another 2 years. Christine? So are you moving that, Christine, or you have a question?
No, I wanted to move that we put forward Gali to be the chair for the next 2 years.
Thank you. And is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Julie. Great. I'm going to call for a vote now. So on this one, we need you to vote in chat if you can. And is there anybody who's on the phone who's not on chat? Don't think so this time.
No, there's nobody
Oh, okay.
unless somebody snuck in there, but no, I don't.
So You can vote yes, no, or abstain. And Jen kind of takes the count of the vote. So I'll wait for Jen to tell us when we're at a point that we've gotten enough votes in that it's clear where we are in our decision-making process.
Gally, I have some news. You have been officially approved to continue in their next term. So there's the news.
Thanks. Thanks, folks, for your continued confidence in me. I appreciate it.
I just have to take a moment to say, thank you, Gally. I won't embarrass you, but believe me, this is not a glamour position that she's in. Hopefully it's fun sometimes, but I just really appreciate the way you lean in and really engage in helping us to move our work forward. So thank you, Gally. And I'll just note that this means that she will have been part of our leadership team. By the end of it, it will have been for 6 years. And I think that kind of continuity in an organization like this is unusual. And I'm glad to see that some of our members, Justin, are still smartasses. Okay, moving right along. The next vote, and I just want to apologize on Charlotte's behalf. She sends her apologies. She is a nurse, and she has been called into an emergency meeting at the hospital where she works, and so she is not able to be here today. But Charlotte has agreed to move into this co-chair role if she is so nominated. So I'm looking for a nomination for, not a nomination, for somebody to move the nomination forward for Charlotte Lemby.
I move that we move Charlotte Lumby. We vote on Charlotte Lumby being the co-chair for the Alliance.
Thank you, Gally.
I'll second it. This is Ren.
Great, thank you, Ren. And Aiden, we caught that about your vote. We'll be sure it's there. No, you should be on that list, Aiden. You're officially a member. All right.
Yeah, Aiden's on the left side under there, under Hugo.
All righty. Okay, so with that, deep breath. I am not the most efficient rule of law person. So having heard the vote, having heard this moved by Gally and seconded by Julie, I'd like to ask you all whether you would like to vote in favor, abstain, or say no to Charlotte in the role of co-chair for the next 2 years.
Perfect. Yep. So Charlotte also is approved as the new co-chair, which means that our leadership for the next couple of years for the Alliance will be these two lovely faces that you see on your screen.
Awesome. And let's do a round. I'm so excited. I mean, as all of you know, that having people committed to leadership is huge, right? So thank you. And thank you for the support, everyone.
All right, folks, thanks for making that process really seamless. Appreciate it. So Annette, sounds like you're gonna chat with us about an update.
Yeah. You know, I partially just wanted to, I've met most of you. If you haven't met me, my name's Annette Marcus. I'm the policy manager with the Oregon Alliance to Prevent Suicide. And I partially just wanted to acknowledge that I had taken 6 weeks off this summer. And thank you for everybody keeping things moving forward. And I took that 6 weeks because I needed a pause. I had gotten really overwhelmed, and I know that I'm not alone in that many people are sort of hitting a wall in one way or another. And I guess I am having to practice that thing around stigma, which is that it was very hard for me to take that break because of the stigma. And I am really glad that I did. And I'm just putting it out here publicly in this space because I feel like it's really important that those of us who do this work around suicide prevention take really fantastic care of ourselves, because we are so much more powerful when we bring our whole selves to the table. And I kind of feel like I can bring my whole self back to this work again. And I actually love this work, and I'd forgotten that. So anyhow, that's maybe not an Alliance update, but an Annette Marcus update. But I think that relationships and connection are at the core of this work we do together. And I don't want us to be an advisory committee that's just that we're doing this thing because it's part of our jobs. It's like, we're real people connected to each other, struggling together to try and really create a world where people don't want to die. People want to hang around because it's a yummy place to be. And somehow I'm able to move myself to that perspective again, which is I'm thrilled about. The other thing I just want to say is that I feel like we're at another very strategic moment for the Alliance. We are right before a legislative session. I know that behavioral health issues will be very central to that. I think the session in some ways, it may be challenging to get attention at this session because I think there's going to be so many pressing needs. And so that as a group, I think we're going to need to be thinking very strategically about where do we put our most effort, and are there other people's efforts that we want to join with or support? And I really want to encourage all of you who are interested in testifying, which is an incredibly empowering experience, to know that you would be, we would welcome you in as somebody who has become a person who goes to the state legislature, who talks about your experience and shares kind of our policy priorities. So if you're interested in that, please let us know. The other thing I want to say is that the heart of the Alliance is our committees. Our committees are not just these things out there. They are like the feet of the work that we do. And as happens, we've had some people move on in different ways. We really need to reinvigorate and bring in some new membership to some of our committees. We've got a bunch of really amazing new members who have joined us, as well as you don't have to be a member to be part of a committee. All of our committees have folks who are not voting members, but very engaged. And so one of the things we're going to do during this meeting is we're going to be flashing up during our breaks, et cetera, sort of what the different committees are and what they're doing, and really encourage all of you to think about where is it that you'd want to spend your time. And the thing I want to entice you with, I wish it could be like a brand new Mercedes-Benz or something, but the thing I want to entice you with is that when you work on these committees, you're actually going to make a difference. That's what I've seen again and again. Real change has occurred because of the work of these committees. And I don't know about you, but I work in a lot of spaces where it doesn't feel that way. And I want that to be how we operate in the world moving forward. We understand that we have an important role, and our committees move work forward in important ways that we very much are hoping is going to ultimately result in fewer young people dying in our state. So with that, I want you to think about the committees, look at them, get intrigued by them today. You heard from Julie. Today, we're going to be deeply hearing about what's happening in schools, in the school space. That's really exciting. And that is my down and dirty update for the group.
Thanks, Annette. And I just want to echo what folks are saying in the chat about you sharing what you've shared, Annette, that by talking about us having a hard time and by modeling self-care, it allows other people to also feel like they can talk about those things and take breaks and know that they're not alone, that they're not the only one who's having a hard time, that they're not the only one who needs a pause. So thank you for being vulnerable and transparent with this group of 56 of us. That's another thing that I appreciate about this group, is that we are a big group of amazing humans that can get work done but can also be really tender and vulnerable. So thank you for showing up in the ways that you do, but thank you for sharing it. So that's a great segue actually to some amazing work that's happening that Laura Rose and Jen are going to be speaking about the lived experience breakout groups that we did from the March quarterly. So Laura Rose or Jen, I don't know which one of you is taking over to you.
Jen, why don't you start? I know you prepared these lovely slides.
Yeah. So as a quick reminder, during our March quarterly meeting, we had some small breakout groups that focused on different types of lived experience. And the goal of these breakout groups was to get feedback specifically from folks who identified in the different areas about how the Alliance can incorporate their voices and our voices into our work. And the 4 groups that we had were direct lived experience, family, friend, support person, loss survivor, and provider and professional. And we got a lot of feedback. This is just one example from one of the groups about some of the feedback that we had received. And so all these cool little different color stickies from our Jamboard. We had some really fantastic conversations. And so that was just the first part of our task that we gave ourselves, was to gather how we could do that. And then we just wanted to see, like, make it into actionable steps for the Alliance to be able to take. And so in order to do that, we have so far held 1 focus group. We're going to have 1 more after the quarterly. So if you'd like to participate in that, stay tuned. A date and time will come out potentially next week for when we're going to hold our second one. It will occur before October, so in late September. And what we did in that first focus group is we added some details to some of the items. We looked for themes. We discussed potential action items from the feedback that was received. And we also started on a workable action plan for the Alliance to be able to follow. And the 2 pieces that we have so far that we would like to be able to do is to, 1, create an outreach plan for how we can reach others with lived experience from those 4 different categories, and others for how we can do that. And then also 2, to redistribute a survey that was sent out in 2020. And that the purpose of that survey that was sent out in 2020 was to get input and feedback from people with lived experience from all across Oregon on what should be included in the current 5-year Youth Suicide Intervention and Prevention Plan, the YSIPP, from that lived experience perspective. So while that was the original focus of the survey, because of how the questions were worded and the types of information that we were looking for, it's still an applicable survey that we can resend out just to see kind of what's changed, what shifted, because the things that we were asking about was like, what is your comfort level with like seeking out services? Do you feel like you know where to go? Do you think it'll be available? Do you think that your schools are able to help? Just a wide variety of different things like that. So we want to see if there's been any change over the last couple of years. And so the idea that we have right now is to look at the survey, make any changes that we need to make to it, and then resend it out in like the 1st or maybe 2nd quarter of next year. So anywhere from like February to April to send it out. So that way we can do that. And our data and evaluation committee is potentially going to be partnering with us on that. So that way we have that overlap between the 2 groups to be able to get that. And that was, oh, I already said that. I need to remember to go to my next slide before I continue talking because it'll say things. But Laura Rose, you had your hand up? Would you like to share anything?
Yeah, I wanted to share that this survey was drafted by people with lived experience, working together, including some of our youth and young adults that were participating over a matter of months on that lived experience advisory. And in addition, John Seeley, who has the U of O Suicide Prevention Lab, and some of the students that work with him also were supportive in developing that piece. And so, yes, well, some of it was time specific around the YSIPP development. A lot of it is generalizable, I think, translatable to a new, a new run. So taking a look at it and making sure it's ready to go, I think will be a great step. The outreach is really, really important. A lot of people might not yet know about the Alliance still. We want to, really be thoughtful on how we include people and let them know about it, and that there is an opportunity for them to give voice as well. And maybe not just one opportunity, like the survey and the lived experience advisory group are only 2 parts, but there's many ways for people to be involved in this entire movement and that we can all connect. So if you have thoughts on that, please share and we'll work forward together.
Yeah, and I believe that the results, if they weren't included with the materials ahead of this meeting, if you would like to see them, I mean, they're not private, like you can see them. So if you're interested in that type of information, that type of data, let me know and I can I can send that on to you. It is a long packet just because it has answers. There's bubbles and then also blank spaces for people to write in. So it's a lot of pages, but it's really fantastic information and really good data. So that is our update. So stay tuned for our next steps. And I'm really excited to be able to continue all of that. Thank you, Laura Rose.
Absolutely. And one more comment is we also had worked on and talked about at the March quarterly meeting about the YSIPP, the opportunities for lived experience in the individual action steps. And so we had a really great meeting with Jill, and she's working on including lived experience as part of the annual report on the update of the YSIPP, I believe. So we're looking forward to that and appreciate that. Thank you.
Back to you, Gally.
Thanks, Jen and Laura Rose. Appreciate all the work that you're doing to head that up. And for folks who have questions or are interested, please reach out to Jen or Laura Rose. Laura Rose, I don't know if you mind dropping your information in the chat so people have your access directly. That would be lovely. Again, we welcome people to get involved in these conversations. We need your voice. So, Annette, do you want to share about the mini grant process, or do you want me to? I'm happy to. Me? Is that me? Okay, yeah.
That was you.
So,
Sorry, I didn't unmute you.
No problem, no problem. So in the past, many of you have heard us talk about a mini grant process where we'd be able to funnel money to the coalitions in the state. And that is on pause right now until we figure out just a little bit more detail. So we will come back to you when we have more information, but just want to let folks know we have not forgotten about that. It's on OHA's and our radar. And we don't have any more information about it right now, but there is a pause on it right now until we have a little bit more details about the process. So any questions about that? And again, that was those grants are mini grants for local coalitions around the state of Oregon. All right, I'm not hearing any questions. All right, Jen, I'm gonna hand it over to you to talk about, we encouraged you all, and you did take a survey and how we're doing and where we should be pivoting, where we should be course correcting, what you like, what you don't like. So Jen will talk about what you shared with us.
Yes, thank you, Gally. So this PowerPoint is super long. I'm not going to go through all 88 pages with you, I promise. I'm just going to touch on a couple of them. Again, if you would like to see the information that's included in here, let me know and I can make sure that you receive this, that it's not private. The information is shared in a variety of different ways because I know we all learn and take in information differently. And also Annette had a really good idea of separating the data out by how long people have been involved with the Alliance, to see if there's any differences with like somebody who's been involved with for 1 year versus since the beginning. And so it's just interesting to just see the differences between it. This table of contents was formatted weird when it shifted from a PowerPoint to a PDF, but this is just examples of what's included in there. So I will scroll through so you can see examples as I get to the data that stood out that I really thought was important to kind of share. And then after this, I will share some of the action items that came from this that we are hopefully going to be, that we'll be doing from some of the feedback. So the vast majority of y'all that are connected with the Alliance work full time in addition to doing this work. So that's really important to be able to see just the passion and just the care that you all have for this. Most of us are loss survivors. Also, most of us have direct lived experience as an attempt survivor, somebody who lives with chronic ideation. And then most of the respondents have been involved with the Alliance for 1 to 3 years, which is pretty interesting. And most 83.3% of folks said that they were able to identify ways that the Alliance as a whole has made a difference in the field of suicide prevention, which is pretty cool. So that means like, not only are you here participating and engaging, but you're also able to see the impact that you all are having, because the Alliance isn't, as Annette has said, like it's not Annette and I, it's all of you that come together to be able to do this work. So it's really cool that y'all are able to see the impact that we're making across the state, which is really exciting. So that was just some of the data that stood out. Now I'm going to swap to, well, let me see. I want to be able to show you the specific action items that we have. And so just so while I'm pulling this up, just so that way folks know about our annual surveys, I should have talked about this at first, but I'm gonna stop sharing while I do this. Oops, okay. The survey goes out on an annual basis, and it's really for us to be able to see kind of what Gally was saying, like where we are, how we should pivot, what we're doing well, how we can improve. And all of this does come from you all, because we want to be able to see how we're better able to work with you, how we can better just do our work and engage and interact with people. So that's really the core of the purpose of why we do this. And in the materials was this extra page that showed some of the action items that start down here. And so I'll just talk through these really briefly, so that way we can see what they are. But some folks have said that they would like better transparency on project status and outcomes. And we have a project tool that I can put a link in the chat in a little bit that is updated on a semi-regular basis. So that way you can see how we're moving forward and what we're doing on our initiatives and our deliverables. Also, there was feedback around interaction between committees and advisory groups, and just kind of unsure of the status on expected guidance on the structure and the roles and responsibilities. Annette created some really fantastic materials that talk through, like we have our leadership guide and other things. So those are on our website, and they can also be more widely shared, just so that way folks can have a better idea of what that looks like. And then the other piece that stood out around the feedback is really what Gally had talked about at the very beginning of the meeting, of just kind of having enough time for us to be able to discuss, talk about things that are shared during our quarterly meetings, and to allow space for a wide variety of input and views to be able to be shared without kind of like just being able to have those conversations in a meaningful way. And so that's something that we're trying to do with this one being our first one, of just having less on the agenda, having fluffy times around our agenda items to be able to allow room for those discussions, and just to be able to allow you all to learn more from each other, and just for us to be able to talk. So that is my super quick overview of this. If you all have any specific questions around it, please let me know. You can ask them now. The materials were included on our email that went out, so that way you can see that more clearly. They're also on our website. And again, if you want the full PowerPoint, all 88 pages of all of the data that was collected and how it was looked at, let me know, and I can also get that to you. And thank you, Jill, for putting that in the chat about the things that Annette created for our leadership and for our Alliance. Folks have any questions, comments, or concerns? Okay. Great.
Well, if people don't have any questions, I just want to call out the amount of time that it took Jen to lead through all of the things that we offered, and all the feedback, and all of the things we need to be doing differently, and all the things. And Jen spent, I would imagine, an incredible amount of time. So thank you, Jen, for digesting all that we said and putting it into a format that we can all hear and understand. So thank you for your time and effort. And then also, as important, keep your feedback coming, folks. So we don't know what we don't know unless you tell us. And especially, I'm really going to be calling out our new members, right? You all are new to this process. And so you have new, fresh eyes, and not that the rest of us can't see things. Those are welcome to come forward as well. But you all are in a really unique position of being like, well, why do we do it this way? That doesn't seem the most efficient, or that wasn't very inclusive, or whatever. So please don't be shy about emailing me or Jen or Annette, you know, anybody who's part of the executive team for the Alliance, we value your opinion and we need your opinion to do this work. So please, please keep it coming. You are not offending or upsetting anyone in any way. We want it. So keep it coming. All right. On the YSIPP, also known as the Youth Suicide. Jill, am I there? Okay, take it away.
Oh, that was excellent. It was like you got caught in a time warp, some sort of tube, a tunnel, as it were. Jen, is it okay if you share my slides? In the spirit of being responsive to how do we know where we're at with what we said we were going to do, knowing that this group, the Alliance to Prevent Suicide, has 15 initiatives, projects that you all identified as important for the work of the committees, advisory groups, and that would be so funny to be like every once in a while. Anyway, yes, Shanda, I agree. Put that on a future agenda item. And that there are many, many, many initiatives that as a state, OHA, other state agency partners, the Alliance to Prevent Suicide are working on. 117 of them were identified, in fact, for the 21-22 years. And we said that when we issued the Youth Suicide Intervention and Prevention Plan for our state, that we were going to take a look each year, take inventory and ask ourselves, what do we want to start, stop, and continue? What makes the most sense given the state of our state, and what makes the most sense given bandwidth? So I feel the need to I also don't know how much time I have. Gally or Annette, can you help me level?
10:55.
Oh, okay, excellent. So I want to, before I start asking you to look at what's next, what do we want to do next? I just want to level set by saying the intention is not, the intention is to do this well. The intention is to prioritize things that we collectively, that you all collectively believe are the most important, and that we have space and bandwidth for to do it with joy and with our hearts intact. And so I just appreciate that modeling, and that you gave earlier as well, that that what I'm not asking you to do is, like, the goal is not to have more than 117 initiatives for the next year. Progress is not going to be about the number of initiatives. I'm just naming that, that we're not going to let ourselves fall into that trap. Okay, next slide. The purpose of my time this morning with you is to just briefly remind us about how we got here, how it's different than the way we've done it in the past, and then to make sure that you all feel like you know what the plan is for that, that annual update that we talked about. And because the Alliance is the advisory group for OHA, for the Oregon Health Authority, Youth Suicide Prevention, and there are other spaces and places that I'm gathering feedback as well, so as to try to not be quite so siloed, particularly in some of the areas of the Oregon Suicide Prevention Framework where we haven't necessarily named initiatives connected to suicide prevention. So that is the reason I'm doing this. Next slide, please. So I don't want to go hash through our lives, but I do want to name that in 2020, on this day, I was presenting, I said this at the beginning, so you maybe already heard me say this, for this fall quarterly meeting in the year of 2020, I was in Shanda's bedroom, as a fire evacuee, because SIO, where I live, had been given orders to not be at home because of wildfires. And so all of that is in the context, and so in this timeline, and I find that just important to note for our, just to name that this is a lot of good work and protective things have happened in our field since then as well. So in 2020, we looked at the first iteration of the YSIPP. We asked for so much feedback. Hundreds of pieces of feedback came through surveys and focus groups and committees. The OHA suicide prevention team leaned incredibly heavily on the University of Oregon Suicide Prevention Lab to help inform that work. The result of that was an Oregon Suicide Prevention Framework. And so that is also the framework in which the adult suicide prevention plan plugged in their initiatives as well. We asked ourselves, what can we prioritize for the next year? Oh, there's a typo right there. We named 117 priority initiatives for 2021 and 2022. Much of that work was things that we were already doing or legislatively mandated to do, and some of that work was new, the next right step. And in 2022, we've tried to focus on organizing tools for project management. How do we let you all know where we're at with all of the things? And so you'll see some of that in PowerPoint. Just naming that there's a link to those initiatives in the PowerPoint, which is in the meeting materials and on the Alliance website. And there's a link to the full YSIPP if you're interested in seeing that as well. Next slide. I wanted to pause before I go into kind of reporting out on where we are and what I'm asking you all to do in your committees over the next couple of months. To name that all of this is nestled within the suicide prevention framework. So this is not just youth suicide prevention, but it's all suicide prevention for our state. And this particular slide in your meeting materials includes two links. One is to an interactive PDF, so you can click through all the pathways and see what sort of the buckets of how we think we might make progress are. And then the second, if you have 10 minutes to watch a video that is not, like I recorded it on a Zoom, it's not gonna win any sort of awards for production or any other award actually, but if you're like, what are frameworks, what are pathways, what are goals, what are initiatives, what are we talking about? Watch that, there's no space tubes in there. Watch that video, it's imperfect, but also helpful. And so I'm going to offer that as well. Next slide, please. Okay. This gives us where we're at right now in September of 2022 with the 117 projects and initiatives that we named were important to either start, stop, or start or continue in this time. The code basically is the darker the color blue, the more done we are or the more sustained we are with that initiative. So for all 117, we're collectively about 60% achieved. Either it was a project that had an end date, which is not often. So some of those are projects with end dates, and some of those are it's achieved as in it's up and sustained and we're doing it and putting resources to it. And there's not, the work is to just keep doing it. And then the lighter you get around the color wheel, the less done the projects are. And so for you, you can see, for example, planning, which is 5% of all of the 117 initiatives, planning for those is the lightest blue color there. On the right side of the screen shows OHA's specific, where OHA's lead on an initiative. So we have 97 of the 117 where there's one of the 5 OHA suicide prevention coordinators and or our adjacent partners that are leading the initiatives. And so you'll see that for OHA, which makes sense given our resources and staffing are slightly above the average of all, that we have about 64% of our initiatives are achieved, about 14% are in progress, about 15% have some early action. We've done a couple of things, but we're not, it's not on its way, and then 6% where we're still kind of planning and haven't done a whole lot. Next slide will show you the alliance related initiatives. And so I want to level set by saying the intention is to just check where we're doing. And the alliance related initiatives are often murkier and squishier and more complex. And so it's not like launch this program, do this thing. It's like figure out what is needed here. And that is part of the reason why it makes total sense to me that fewer of the initiatives are just achieved that are connected to the Alliance. 33% of the 15 initiatives currently on that tracker that Jen referenced, the Alliance project tracker, are marked as achieved. About 53% of them are in progress, working on what you said you were going to work on, and about 13% are in early action. You'll notice that everything's farther along than just planning. So that's the other difference, is that there's not any that are kind of in that first. We're just still thinking about what we need to build in. Next slide. The other way that I want us to think about where we're at as far as bandwidth goes, another piece of information that felt important is the color coding on the YSIPP initiatives tracker. So a green colored status box of the 117, 93 of those, or 79%, are in a green category. That means that where we thought we were going to be is about where we are. And so if it's sustained work, it's on track. There aren't any bumps. Well, there aren't major bumps. If it's marked yellow, that means that it's a bit behind, that we're not exactly where we are. Just for myself, when I was looking through the initiatives list, my yellow, the ones that I'm lead on, my yellows are about bandwidth specifically, like that I can know that the reason it's behind is because there's too much that I'm trying to do. And so that was an interesting thought practice for me to go through that as well. And then the red means that that we're either it's stuck or stalled, or we're behind on a whole bunch of deadlines. It's very few. There are 4 of the 117. The ones that are attached to my name, I have 3 of those 4, and they're about funding that we got as far as we could go in planning or doing programming, and now we need to attach funds to it. So just naming that as well. Appreciate the call out that this. I want us to take a beat and understand that in the years 2021 and 2022, that our field, our team, has gotten a lot, made a lot of progress and gotten a lot done, and a lot of really good, beautiful work has come. I don't know if you remember, but in 2020. I asked us to kind of have the theme of growing roots, that we had gotten a whole bunch of money and funding in 2019 and stood up a bunch of programming, and that it felt like it was the time to kind of settle in and grow roots. And so this to me is a good indication of those roots, finding where the direction that will be life-giving for them to go. All right, next slide. Okay, so this fall, I'm hoping that in your committees, that you will look at primarily one of your 15 initiatives, if you've got a kind of a main thing that you're doing, And then also secondarily to look at what are the things that are related to your committee that you wanted to be informed about or keep tabs on. And then asking thoughtfully, like what, well, I think I have another slide about it. What start, stop, and continue. Are there things that we need to let go of and prune? Are there things that we want to continue doing and water or grow roots? And is there anything that we want to start planting? It's harvest season in SIO, which is, I think, maybe why I'm all about the analogy at the moment, but it's working for me, so maybe it's working for you as well. Okay, here's the map of what I'm hoping that could look like. That today and in September, that we have updated where we're at, which is what I just showed you. I asked all of the lead humans in each of the 117 initiatives to update the smart sheet. I'm letting you know about where we're at. SSPW is an OHA sponsored series of 3 meetings. One is just the 5 suicide prevention coordinators who are most of the team leads of the YSIPP initiatives. The second is around youth serving state agency partners. And so that SSPW team meets next week on Tuesday to ask about, for example, what are the place overlaps with the Oregon Department of Ed that we want to add in, start, stop, and continue on the YSIPP. And then the third iteration is that as OHA, a whole bunch of folks that kind of have adjacent work, 988, mobile response, the things that matter to us, but that aren't like in the suicide prevention program. Annette, you have a question?
Yeah, actually just a comment, Jill, because this kind of evolved yesterday. We have an equity committee, as you know, for the Alliance, and one of the really important pieces of work that group has done is put together an equity screen. And so as we go through this process of start, stop, and continue, we'll be asking our committees to take a look at the equity screen, which has a series of questions to think about, to help us think about, are we really living our values? You know, is there some big miss? Is there something, yeah, how does that inform our stop, start, and continue? So I just wanted to add that into the mix.
Great. And I imagine that the work that Laura Rose presented on earlier about lived experience voice and how we're doing that matters too in the how we're doing our work. So thank you for bringing that into the space. In October, at your next meeting for your committees, I'm hoping that you would start that, begin that process of asking yourselves, what do you want to start, stop, and continue? I also listed some other places and spaces that I will be having a modified version of this because none of the rest of those have necessarily lead roles on any initiatives in the YSIPP, but that thinking about collective impact and collaboration, wanting to gain input from others as well. In November, I'm hoping to begin to kind of test the waters with some youth think tanks and focus groups, and asking that Alliance committees kind of shore up the final requests or recommendations to me, knowing that again, we're just trying to have kind of checkpoints for updating the YSIPP. If there's a thing that we need to do to be responsive, it is a smart sheet online that we can edit if a new direction is needed to be added. But that having a moment in our calendar year where we thoughtfully go through and ask, what do we have left, felt important. Next slide. Okay. So many words on one slide. I apologize, team. So what am I asking you to do? I already said the first part. The second part is thinking about what's the next right step in 2023. What's left on your plate of the initiative that you said that isn't achieved, is in progress somewhere. What's left on that? Is that still what we want to keep working on? What do we think we have bandwidth for? Are there any pieces of this that we want to let go of and prune? Are there any projects or initiatives that we want to add? And then that last piece feels important to name that you're unique. The Alliance is unique in a lot of different ways, but one of the ways is that one of your roles and responsibilities is also to issue recommendations to the Oregon Health Authority, which you have done in funding priorities and in the feedback processes that I talked about that we did in 2020 and early 2021. But this is another moment to say the Alliance doesn't want to do this, but we think OHA should do this, this, and this. Knowing that we have a policy options package, which is the way that state agencies ask for funding. We have a policy options package in the hopper for the governor to consider, the new governor to consider in the fall, and then for consideration around from the state legislature. And again, lots of unknowns, of course, because we're waiting on a statewide governor election. But that we do have a funding ask for increasing suicide prevention in our state, particularly around our adult suicide prevention goals. But there's plenty of youth stuff in there as well. As you might imagine, Shandon and I get bossy in those spaces. Okay, next slide. Oh, okay. What questions do people have? Jen, will you take the screen share off so that it's just our faces? So I go ahead, any questions? Okay. Well then,
Sorry, this is Julie. I'm not sure if this I'm not sure how this question is going to land or that it's going to come out the right way, but of all of this cumulative work that's been done since the inception of the Alliance and of the YSIPP, which preceded that, what progress are we needing to demonstrate to the legislature? I think everybody in the room is very dedicated to what progress must we make to better protect and respond to youth and families and young adults who are, the reason why we come together here. And that's very rooted and very clear. But are there other measurable progress marks that we really need to make that we might not be, so that the legislature understands the work that we are accomplishing and what they need to see so that they can continue to not only support us, but continue to increase support as needed?
It's a great question. I was waiting for something that was your preface was I was waiting. Also should be noted that I just found out that Julie and I are almost neighbors in SIO. So fun fact. Yeah, it's a great question. Part of what we're the strategy is around the annual report that comes out is to kind of tell that story of where we've been and where we need to go. And it gets to be so big that it's sometimes hard to condense into what's the most important information for folks to know. Secondly, I'll say that one of the things that is a part of the Oregon Suicide Prevention framework is around data and evaluation, that we need to be like on a strong foundation of data and evaluation. And that is an area that I think we have lots of work to do on asking ourselves, what are we measuring and what story does that tell? And so that's work that is on the list of super important and not yet ready. It's like there's work to be done there. It's definitely an area where myself personally, and then being able to help guide us collectively and how we're doing that. So I will say that I issued a kind of like, would this be helpful measures to the Data and Evaluation Committee of the Alliance? And I think it was imperfect and maybe not quite right. And so John Seeley and the University of Oregon, I basically said, like, okay, I need more help. This is it. I'm not doing this in the way that I want to. And so they're going to be helping me with some a task group, subgroups to think through how are we measuring that as well. Yeah. The other thing,
And if I might just respond to that, you know, in the 988 MRSS space, that's also, you know, one thing we don't really know in our state is all of that data and information that's driving, that helps inform us of all of these amazing actions that we're all doing. Are we making a difference? And are we making a difference in the ways that we need to make a difference? And so in this context of the wreckage post-COVID, while we're still experiencing COVID, and what are we rebuilding, I think this data collection that will inform decisions and actions and funding rather than just what we think, it is so imperative. And I know that there's a lot of discussion in multiple spaces around that. So I wonder if integrating, connecting, and continuing to put focus on that it is, I hope, and I think we are turning our attention to that.
yeah. No, I appreciate you saying that, Julie. I wholeheartedly agree, and I want to be really in my head. I want to know what our measures are, and feel good about that, so that we can integrate it in a less messy way. And so whether or not that's correct, I will appreciate feedback as we go. Mila?
I know that Annette had mentioned that we could totally talk about my question during the school section, which I'm totally fine to wait, because I think part of the answer was also posted in chat. My hope was around just like the understanding that having funding is not always something that we can actually use in a school system. So if we're going to have additional funding, making it possible for us to even be able to use it in a school system and not have barriers to use whatever money is going to be available. So one quick example of that was Amy and I set money aside to provide youth safe training specifically for PPS folks, just because PPS folks didn't have the capacity to go to an outside training, just because we would need to cover and pay for people's FTE when they leave or when they can't be somewhere. And so will this money have the capacity to be flexible enough for us to be able to use it in a way that's responsive in a school setting? Can we pay for subs to cover for certain roles, so that people can receive the training? Can we extend the training to coaches? Like, it's just sometimes with money, it's great to have it, and it's not helpful when we can't use it in ways that are responsive in a school system.
Excellent, great questions. The policy options package that I referenced for funding has an earmark for supporting Addie's Act implementation, and it's not fleshed out further than that. And so I appreciate the feedback as well. And there's a whole host of, speaking to how weird funding can be, there's a whole host of money that's about to come for supporting mental health in schools. And my guess is there will be barriers and frustrations around. So I just want to acknowledge, I hear flexible funding for responsiveness is important. And I don't have more specific plan for that line item in the policy options package ask at this point.
You know, before Jill closes, I just want to say, if you're a chair of one of our committees, I look for an email from us because we'll really want to strategize around how to do this most effectively. I think it's really, I'm so excited about the model working in this way, so we don't just have this document that was created 5 years ago and isn't meaningful, that we continue to look at it in real time. And since it's the first time we've done exactly this, I think that getting together and having a shared approach is going to be really important.
And I just want to say, folks, that I just appreciate all the work, Jill, that you're doing to move this work forward. The organization that you have around like what's moving forward, what we need, you know, what's stopped, what your responsibilities are, what the Alliance's responsibilities. It's a massive beast to manage. So just appreciate you tracking it in the way that you are and keeping it moving forward, because it's a lot to move forward. So thank you for all your heart and energy that you put into it. Any other questions or thoughts about the Youth Suicide Intervention and Prevention Plan? All right, hearing none, we are going to be taking a 10-minute break. So our agenda is serving us really nicely. So how about you come back a little bit more than 10 minutes. How about you come back at 11:05, take that bio break, coffee, tea break, stretch break, whatever, take good care of you. And please come back at 11:05 and we're gonna talk about some more amazing things. All right, see you at 11:05. Hi, folks, welcome back. Hope you had a good break. We're able to get some coffee or tea, take a bio break, stretch. And I see Chris. Okay, perfect. So the next thing on our agenda is to showcase some of the amazing work that our LGBTQ plus advisory team or advisory group has come up with. And I'm going to hand it over to Chris in just a minute, but the context of this toolkit that Chris is going to talk about today really comes from a place of what was happening in Clackamas County and what's happening all around the nation, quite frankly. But I was approached, probably about a year ago at this point, 9 months ago at this point, asking if I would present to a school board in Clackamas County to talk with them about the risk of suicide pertaining to our LGBTQ plus students and our, specifically our trans students and other students who we know to be at significant risk of suicide. And I wasn't able to attend the meeting because I wasn't able schedule-wise to attend the meeting, but I also felt like I didn't have anything that I could say to the school board other than you've got to be kidding me, and you need to protect our kids and their rights and advocate for these young people. And so I didn't have any tools. And so that began kind of many of us talking around, like, what if we had a toolkit where me and you and other people in our community could take said toolkit and be armed and prepared to have a conversation with individuals like school boards or other individuals who are saying that trans rights don't matter, or that our LGBTQ plus young people are not, it doesn't matter if they are not treated fairly, et cetera, et cetera. You know the whole thing. So I'm going to hand it over to Chris to talk about this amazing thing that that committee has, that advisory group has come up with as a tool that you and me and anyone else who wants to stand up to the terrible things that are happening in our state and our nation. So Chris, take it away. Sorry that I feel like I'm fumbling a little bit, but this is really important work, and I'm really incredibly thankful to you and the advisory committee for taking the time to make this amazing tool that I plan to use in Clackamas County, and I'm hoping that the rest of you could take to the other 35 counties in this state.
Thanks, Callie. And I just want to say that as the advisory group, we really appreciated the request for a tool like this. Often we feel like we're some of the only voices speaking up for this, and it's really wonderful to know that there's support from the Alliance, there's support from coalitions, from our members. And so I'll be sharing with you a nearly final draft of a guide to public comment that we have created through the LGBT advisory group for the Alliance with some of our mini grant folks and some other partners throughout the state. This will be getting kind of a little bit of a facelift to look nice, but I want to walk you through the content and what we've thought about for this document. The goal of this resource is really to equip us as suicide prevention advocates with appropriate language and easy to access resources for providing public comment to support LGBTQIA2S+ affirming practices and policies. And since the request came specifically around school board meetings, that's the lens that this toolkit is made from. But we know that a lot of public comment opportunities pop up outside of school board meetings, and what we've provided here can be transferable to that. So we've shared a little bit of that background that Callie shared with us, and also noting that we do have statewide policies that guide support for priority populations in schools, including LGBTQ students, like Addie's Act, which we are talking about a lot today, the student success plans and the LGBTQ student success plans specifically. So we do have things that support, provide affirming environments for LGBTQ students. And so it's helpful that we know what those are, what they say, and how they should be implemented so that we can advocate for them to be implemented in ways that are positive. We've also provided here, there's a group called the Movement Advancement Project, which has a number of really excellent guides on messaging and on how to combat certain messages that we hear against trans youth, queer kids, LGBTQ families and the like. And so we've got a number of those here linked for you to easy access before diving into the rest of this toolkit to get a good background on what we're talking about and why. In this guide, we have for you information on why public comment's important, some core components of what public comment is. We were taking the approach that maybe you've never done this before. So we wanted to share with you what the process might be like, how much time you might have when you're speaking at a school board meeting, for example, as well as some tips for crafting and delivering your own comment. We have examples of public comment that has been made at school board meetings throughout the state, particularly here. I'm based in Salem, and so I've got some examples from folks in Salem. I've got examples from folks in Southern Oregon, and I'm very grateful that people shared what they've shared their local school board meetings for us to include in this. We also have more resources, probably more than you could need, but we want to make sure you're well resourced and have as much information at your fingertips as you might want to dig into. And then at the end, we'll have other examples of similar advocacy from the Alliance. As the Alliance, we've made a couple of comments or calls to action to other statewide agencies for this similar cause. And so we'll be providing you with the full text of those letters as well. Our approach with this toolkit is with the underlying assumptions that most people love their children and want to see them do well, and that most people can get behind the cause of youth suicide prevention, which is really the underlying thing that we're talking about here when we're talking about creating affirming and protective environments for LGBTQ students, and also the other identities that might have that cause intersectional oppressions and damage to them based on how society treats people. We've also got the core concepts of equity that was created by the YSIPP equity work group that we're also hoping to carry through this toolkit. Some thank yous and acknowledgements. I'm not going to go through this in depth, but I just wanted to show you the different pieces. Why public comment, the different pieces to crafting a public comment, considerations, knowing that live comment often has the most impact, and it's also very hard to get up and speak in front of people. So if you can have a group of folks to work on this with you, that's often very helpful. Knowing that if you are speaking orally, you can have as little as 2 minutes. So we really need to get to our points and have succinct messages and powerful messages. And so here are some school board comments, and we have for you in the title, if this was an oral comment, if it was a written comment, regarding the tone of school board meetings. Is this one from a concerned community member? So we're providing you what is the lens, what is the talking point, and then the full text of the comment that was made. So we've got from a community member, we have from a teacher and parent regarding some things that were happening at school board meetings. We have from another teacher talking to a school board meeting, from a behavioral health care provider talking at a school board meeting. And my apologies for the scrolling. I know that's not always the best over Zoom. From a teacher and community organizer. And I believe that's it. We may have 1 or 2 other examples. And then we've got for you this list of tips for providing public comment with a couple more resources in there, including remembering how we talk about suicide also matters. So keeping our safe messaging for suicide prevention also at the forefront of this issue. We put together a small FAQ, like, don't we already have protections? Why does it matter that we're talking about this? Do I need to out myself when I'm making public comment? What will that do for me or for the comment that I'm making? Where might these discussions pop up? Why is the Family Acceptance Project research important to this conversation? It's very well documented that supportive and accepting environments are protective against suicide for LGBTQ youth, and that includes families as well as school environments. How can I stay up to date? Is extra help available if I want to do this? We're saying that while we can't guarantee that we can help with every single instance, we do want to make ourselves available to folks if that's something that you want to do. Our list of resources includes messaging guides and strategies, information from the Oregon School Board Association about how school board meetings should be run and the standards that they are held to, the public policy agenda from GLSEN, resources from Family Acceptance Project, resources on youth-led advocacy if youth want to get involved, and different thoughts on how that can happen in a safe way. Some Native youth resources, information from Basic Rights Oregon, from the Equality Federation, from Berkeley Media Studies Group, all on different ways to craft messages. So that is the core of the toolkit. And then fresh off the presses, our partners in Klamath County at Citizens for Safe Schools drafted a one-pager that looks beautiful and talks about LGBTQIA suicide prevention public comment, including why is this important, how to craft it, helpful tips, and suicide prevention language. I'll be providing a back page to this that has facts on LGBTQ youth in Oregon, what we know about risk and protective factors. And Annette and I will be speaking on these guides and resources at the Oregon State Suicide Prevention Conference to see this sort of thing as a proactive approach to increasing protections and protective factors and other ways that folks can get involved if public comment is not the right way for you to engage in advocacy. So a super quick overview of what we're providing. This should be out and available to everybody very soon and definitely by the conference. And I see that there's a bunch of messages in the chat that I haven't been able to keep up with. So I'm going to stop talking. And if there were certain questions or comments that folks want to pull out, I know that we're out of time, but just wanted to thank you for, again, your support and for allowing us to share this at this meeting.
Chris, what's happening in the chat is just a lot of gratitude and feeling so amazed that we have this resource available. There's a lot of love going on in the chat for you and the rest of the folks who have created this amazing, amazing, amazing resource. And since I'm hearing that this will be ready soon, I would like to ask and challenge every one of you in this room, in this virtual space, to think about how they can use this toolkit. Chris, when you were talking, I was listening, but I was also scrolling through my email to find the person who asked me to testify or to speak at the North Clackamas School Board to talk about our trans kids and our queer youth, because there was a lot of terrible things being said about them. And North Clackamas School District is one of our more progressive school districts, really, in Clackamas County. So if North Clackamas is saying this type of stuff, it's concerning what our other 9 districts are saying about our queer and trans young people and their families. So I love the idea of using this as a prevention tool. So I really, really challenge all of you to think about getting on the docket, getting on the schedule to speak proactively at a school board, to speak in front of the public in whatever way you can. Each of you, each of us have a role to play, many roles to play in this work, personally and professionally. And this is the time to make a lot of noise when it comes to this topic, and to be an ally for our young people and their families who are really, really, really struggling right now with all of the things that are happening. So I'm going to come back to you all in 3 months and ask who has done what, just to see how we've moved the dial on this. But that is my challenge to all of you, and I hope that you will rise to it. Chris, thank you to you and the advisory group for all of the time and energy that has gone in clearly into this resource, the resources. I'm so excited to get my hands on it, and I'm gonna make a date to get on North Clackamas's school board meeting. Christina, maybe you can come with me, since Christina and I are both in Clackamas County. And we're gonna, well, at least I'm gonna make a little bit of a ruckus, because that's what needs to happen at this point. Any other questions, comments, thoughts for Chris about this amazing resource that their team has created? Seeing a lot of love for you, Chris, going on. All right, folks. Well, that's also another good segue, our theme, talking about schools and the amazing things that can happen and are happening in our schools all around the state. So I'm going to hand it over to Claire, who is going to talk about an update around the Alliance for Life School Suicide Prevention and Wellness Program that is amazing. And if you don't know about it, you're going to hear all about it today. And Claire, take it away. It's all yours.
Hello, thank you, Galli. Yeah, Justin and I are gonna share a little bit of updates. We're gonna cover quite a few things actually. And Jen, if it's okay, I'll just let you share screen. Perfect. Awesome. So we can go ahead and move to the next slide, Jen. So we're going to look at a couple of different projects. So these are all examples of how we are monitoring Addie's Act. And so before we do that, we're going to level set with some of the other projects and initiatives that the schools committee is working on. Justin and I are currently co-chairs of the schools committee since Lon stepped down. If anybody isn't already involved in the schools committee, we encourage you to come and attend the next meeting, which is happening in 2 weeks, so you can get more familiar with all the projects. We'll also be voting if anyone wants to step up. And you know, if you want to come help Justin and I, we would love that. So the projects we are going to be doing quick overviews of is the School Suicide Prevention and Wellness Program, which I'll get to in just a sec. The project that we just did, which is an Addie's Act landscape scan. And so this is what we partnered with OHA and ODE to do, to take a look at what is currently out there. What is Addie's Act looking like to the public eye, essentially. And then John, Rochelle, and Shanda are also going to share a little bit about the University of Oregon Suicide Prevention Project, which is happening in 7 schools currently. And then Whitney was not able to attend today, but I just want to mention that there are 2 other projects happening, including the Forward Project in Deschutes County and other think ODE also has something happening because the grant they just received. But we're only going to cover the top 3. So we can go ahead to the next slide, and then Justin, I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Claire. You putting all this together, as I have survived my first week back at school, and just want to my other school-based colleagues out there can kind of share their own experience, but my sense that I get from my colleagues, my coworkers, is this year is a sense of a little more settled than how we started last year. There were a lot of things up in the air. There's a sense of sort of guarded optimism. But as Gally mentioned, also, there's this sort of bigger nationwide backdrop of schools feeling like they're kind of under attack in a variety of social and political spheres. So I think that's not the front and center thing, but I'm feeling a better sense of optimism and a better awareness of the work that's been going on. So I know this work is pervading into schools. They are difficult structures, have been in them for almost 30 years now. So it is difficult to create change, and yet this work continues, and even the little changes are beneficial for everybody. So thank you all the folks that are contributing to this. And I do want to recognize Lon's tireless work. We are here because of Addie's Act in many respects, and this is not largely my work. This is work that he put together in organizing the initiative structures from inside the schools committee particularly, and within the Alliance as a whole. So I really want to thank him for everything he put forward on this. And hopefully Claire and I can continue that work and continue with those goals. None of that really has changed from our perspective. But within that sort of master plan in supporting Addie's Act, we just have sort of, these are envisioned as several pillars of support. One is just working, again, with new leadership. We're working on committee functions, just kind of how we operate within the committee. Also that ongoing outreach for membership and participation, the initiatives being aligned and linked with a lot of the stuff that Jill was talking about, and the coordinated activities with alignment with the YSIPP. And I apologize if I'm rambling. Ran out of the house really quickly this month. So I'm on a half of an old muffin from the staff room and a lot more coffee than I probably should have had. So, and then focusing on how we are sharing, we're kind of working right now on just our internal and external communication tools, how we get information out, and what are some of our objectives for creating similar work products like those white paper or resource paper that was shared. So those are the general structures that the schools committee is working. And next slide. So some of the tasks and accomplishments we did want to highlight. So thank you, Shannon. If there was a way to share snacks over Zoom, I would vote for that capability. So within the committee functions area, we have a project master plan with some subplans underneath that, and then a process for monitoring those short and long-term initiatives, as I said, aligned with the YSIPP. And then have also started weekly breakout groups. That's kind of actually a continuation that has started in the spring for the actual work. So we use the committee time for sort of updating, and then our hope is to have some of those specific tasks and deliverables be worked on actively by breakout teams who are interested in those particular tasks. Within membership, we have already done that member pool, analyzing gaps in roles and functions and levels of engagement. As I think was mentioned earlier, most of us have other full-time jobs that we are doing on top of this. So our ability to everybody's commitment is very obvious, but not everybody is going to be able to actively create a work product. on a day-to-day basis. And then revisiting the member survey that was started by Lon last year in terms of just ability to what are our priorities, and are we making sure that we have all those roles filled that we feel are most critical to getting this work done. And then there's some coordinated activities with presentations planned at the Oregon School Psych Association and the Oregon School Boards Association conferences coming up in October and November. And then next meeting, we're working on some of those internal communication tools and technologies to make sure that we can get information out, because that's been identified as an area of challenge. And I know that happens for all of us. We're doing lots of things, and it's sometimes hard to have a consistent message going out to everybody. So next slide. And this was done by Spencer Delbridge, and he has left for greener pastures, I guess, in his other work. But I want to thank him as well for putting together sort of the process of communication, kind of how this works statewide, so that localities can identify where the information flow, how the information flow should be working. And that's in previous resource materials from the Alliance. And next slide. Take it away, Claire.
Okay. So for anyone that is not already familiar with the SSPW program, I'm just going to do a quick overview of who we are. So this map that you're seeing is where all of the SSPW coordinators are located. They're all present in this meeting as well. And so we have a Northwest coordinator, Central Oregon, Mid-Central, Southwest, and Eastern Oregon. And our whole job is just providing technical assistance to develop ADISAC plans and help schools actually implement them. As many of you are probably aware, districts are all at different stages of this. A lot of the times we're helping a district, but we're also helping a school, an alternative school. And so the TA is looking pretty different depending on where they're at with their implementation. Can go ahead and move to the next slide. So like I said, we are, 50% of the time we're working with schools, not only school districts. That really depends on the size of the school district. Many people are wearing various different hats in some of our more rural schools, which can affect the momentum and the progress of making policies actually into living, breathing plans. And so TA looks very different. We show up in all various different spaces, including local coalitions, ESD meetings. We work with the ESD SSPS teams. Sometimes we're in systems of care meetings. It really depends on who those players are in all of the local regions, so that we can get to know what's happening on the ground, what the barriers are, and help those areas develop their own localized team and continue to build out their own resources. Just want to say we delivered 72,000 funds of mini grants this previous year, which all went towards some really great innovative things happening in schools. And we have over 100,000 to give out this year. So we are hoping we're going to plan to open up the mini grant cycle October 3rd, and we're changing up the way we're doing that just to ensure that schools are taking that funds and making sure that they're using it the most impactful way. So they're looking at their youth that might be at higher risk. They're elevating youth voice. And we're also using other funds available more mindfully, such as what an ESD has to offer for trainings, and maybe we can steer them in that direction and help connect them to those local resources, or maybe some other grant opportunities that we are aware of. So we'll be working with Big River programs on that. Next slide. So this is a little bit of an overview of the project that we did. And so we are still finalizing it and looking at what it is telling us. So it was the first statewide scan of school district suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention plans according to Addie's Act requirements. So part of the scan questions included all of the Addie's Act requirements, as well as some additional information that our team wants to know so that we can make sure that we are capturing the whole picture. And because Addie's Act is required to be like a district plan is required to be posted on their website, we were only taking information from those posted on the website. And so we're going to have two separate reports. And so what we plan to do with the data gathered is to look at it with all of our partners, including the schools committee, ODE, OHA, as well as ESD teams, and think about what are the clear opportunities, what schools have something awesome happening that can just be a model so we don't have to recreate the wheel. And then how are we developing like tools and templates that can just easily be transferred over for a school district to use, such as like Mila was saying for PPS, how are we making sure schools are being accountable for what they're required to do? So it's looking at some of these things like communication pathways, as well as specific plans for training and curriculum and youth engagement. Next slide. So I'm not going to be giving any details about what came of the scan in this presentation. More so just want to share when to be expecting that. So with the help of Alyssa, our program evaluator at Lines for Life, we are working on a few different reports. So we're going to have a regional dashboard for the SSPW and SSPS teams to use in their regional strategic planning meetings happening later this month in early October. So that's taking a look at like what schools had a plan posted. What do we know about the ones that do and don't? Do we have a relationship with them? If we don't, what does that tell us with the progress that they're making? How can we, engage in more thoughtful outreach to them? How can we strategize on building trusting relationships and be able to get to the point where we can give them feedback on their Addie's Act? We'll also be providing a report to ODE, OHA, and the Governor's School Safety Task Force. And that will also go over some of the numbers and also point to some of the clear opportunities, like we were saying. What does this tell us about communication from state level? What does this tell us that superintendents know versus what the school counselor knows? And again, so we're pulling from the plans that were posted online. We'll have a separate report of content as well as those not posted. So what is our team like? What are we seeing and hearing that's happening on the ground? What are the barriers? As well as like our team is hearing about awesome, successful stories and like really innovative ways to engage with youth and families, and their plans not posted yet. So how are we capturing that and being able to use that as a model for other school districts? Okay, and I'm going to pause there, and Shanda or Jill or anyone from my team, if I missed some big thing regarding our project, feel free to jump in, but I can also just take a couple of minutes to answer questions.
I just want to say that one of the YSIPP initiatives was that, connected to ODE, was that report of 197 out of 197 school districts reported self-reported compliance with Addie's Act, and that's not the information that will come in the report from Claire, that there's far fewer that have plans posted to websites, which is one of the check boxes to say you're in compliance. And so just naming it as an example of job security, there's more work to do, right?
I was just this is so helpful, and I'm just wondering if, I think there's a bunch of people from your team here, Claire. I wonder if they could, like, I don't know, everyone put a heart up or raise your hand or something, just so folks can kind of look around our screen and see that there's a whole bunch of folks who are doing this work.
Yeah, Jed, do you want to take us off screen share? And then my team, if you could all put your cameras on and an emoji up.
Actually, if they can raise their hand, it moves them to the top so we can all actually see them. Could you, there we go.
Oh, new Zoom tricks, I didn't know.
Do folks know, Claire, do folks know, not to get lost in the weeds, but do folks know that who their person is in their region? Like I know Ashley is my person for Clackamas County, but it might be helpful for again, we have time, but it might be helpful just to hear kind of briefly, like what region these folks cover to put the face with the name.
Yeah. Why don't we just do that very quickly? And I'm gonna put you on the spot, Boston, and then just pass it to the next person.
Hi, I'm Boston Colton, and I'm the Eastern Oregon SSPW, and I live in Baker City. And I'll pass it to Lucina.
Hello, I'm the Southwest coordinator. I live in Veneta, Oregon, so Lane County, and I serve all the way down and over to Lake. And I'll pass it to Isabella.
Hi, everybody. My name is Isabella Acevedo. You should hear pronouns, and I am the Northwest Oregon coordinator. So I cover the Portland Metro, North Coast region, also Benton, Polk counties as well. So good to be here and meet everybody. And I will pass it to Ashley.
Hi, everybody. I am the Central and Mid-Central Oregon School Suicide Prevention and Wellness Coordinator. So that includes not just Deschutes, Jefferson, and Crook County, but it also for Central Oregon, it goes north. So all the way up towards Gilliam, Hood River, Wheeler, all those counties in between. And then the Mid-Central region for me would be Clackamas County and Lane County and Marion County. And thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Any last questions before Shanda takes it away with the other project?
Somebody asked to see the map again, so that's why this is pulled up.
Perfect.
I just, when folks were saying where they were, I thought this one might be helpful to see, see where folks, where you might be when you're looking for your own respective county in this 36 counties that we have in our state.
Yeah. So Ashley covers both the blue and the yellow regions. And that's really just for our own internal purposes in the way that we were distributing school districts, because the Northwest region is so condensed, we had to just carry some over. And so Clackamas County, of course, is also pretty well populated. So we were able to just transition that onto Ashley's responsibilities, even though we know no one identifies as Central Oregon in that area.
Hello, I'm Shanda Hostetler. I am with the Oregon Health Authority. I use she, her pronouns. So as you saw in that map of sorts that Justin showed us, like there's a lot of moving parts in suicide prevention in schools, which is lovely and beautiful. And when Addie's Act rolled out in 2019, which required school districts to have a plan, and this group of humans at the Alliance worked really hard to get that done, to get that legislation passed. What we knew, as is true of most efforts in policy, is that that was not the end of that road, that was a really good policy, but was really a beginning, or really a midpoint. And so immediately the conversation began to look at what can we do to know if that's working. So we have these programs, we have these human beings in these positions. How do we know it's working? So we have a number of efforts, because those of you in all corners of Oregon know that schools are different from one to another. Counties are different. In Oregon, we love being different from each other, which is part of our strength, but also makes it challenging to know what's going on statewide. So we can't, I mean, some school districts are literally a one-room schoolhouse with all the grades in one room, and that's the whole district. And then we've got, PPS, Portland Public, which is clearly more than one schoolhouse. And so we wanted to look around, and we wanted to do that in a way that was actually meaningful. And so in order to do that, it has meant having a number of different ways of evaluating, one of which is Claire's team's project with the statewide scan that's looking across the whole state. What do districts have? What does it look like? The whole broad landscape. And then another one is the project I'll talk about right now, which is the school suicide prevention project, which I know there's a lot of S's and P's and all the things we are talking about within schools. And, you know, we tried really hard to name this something else, but we also wanted it to be clear. For a while, it was called like the Noodle Project, but what is that? And so this one is diving with more depth into specific implementation in school buildings. So this is a 3-year research practice partnership. So what that means is that it's not extractive. We're not coming in and taking a look around and taking data and leaving. It's a co-design partnership with school buildings. Our aim was to get a cross-section across Oregon, and to get schools that were interested to partner, but were different from each other. So this project again looks at school buildings, which I will remind you are not charged with having a suicide prevention plan. That's the district, right? And so we wanted to take a look at, so districts have a plan, but what does that look like in a building? What does that look like for staff and students and the community? So rather than coming in and getting that data, what we're doing is going out, meeting with schools, having a long-term project and saying, coming in with tools and asking them to share information back with us and look at what's going on. What do you want help in building? How can we help you? And which makes it more intensive, but also more fun, I'm going to say. Sorry to folks that love data collection in other ways, but the conversations have been really life-giving. Many folks, so right now it's U of O, OHA, and Lines for Life at the helm of this, but there are many partners, like the Alliance has been very involved in this project. ODE has been involved. There is, you'll get this in the meeting materials, and there's a link where it says here, and you can click on there and see sort of the partner map of this particular project. So this spring was this last year that's over, and now we're in a new one, and how does that happen? But last year was the first year. We had 7 schools in 7 different counties, and I'll show you a map on the next slide. We are looking at possibly onboarding 3 more this spring. But for this moment, we have 7. And we did an initial consultation meeting, which again, when you have the slide deck, you can click on that if you want to see like, what did that slide deck look like? You can look right through it. And a work session where we went through their suicide prevention work, and we used a tool that the U of O lab designed. And then we provided a summary for the schools that said like, here's what we talked about. And here's sort of the areas of growth you identified. Here's some of the observations we made. And then year 2 and 3, we're going to be doing targeted action steps built with the school. So what do you want to work on? What do you want to grow? This project is not intended to just observe. It's truly intended to come alongside schools and actually be useful to them. I hope this doesn't, research is always useful, to be clear. It just doesn't always feel useful in the moment. So we're aiming for that because schools are busy. We'll be doing surveys, student and staff surveys. We're going to be doing network improvement communities, which means essentially a learning collaborative with school leadership. And then we also have the availability to do focus groups with students or staff. And all of these will be specific to what the school wants and needs. The next slide is just an image of what you just saw, the SSPW map, but with the little dots are approximately where the schools are located. You can go to the next slide. That's just to show that we're trying to aim to get a whole cross section. So here's the takeaways that we heard just this first year. And they're not rocket science, but they're important things that we're hearing from schools. So number one being that school teams care so much about student mental health and staff mental health and suicide prevention. They are highly motivated. They saw in COVID increased mental health issues and are increasingly aware and concerned, and they want to do something about it, which should go without saying, but I think sometimes we lose sight of that. Number two, school teams shared a whole bunch of really unique and innovative school suicide prevention activities. We heard about therapy rats and hedgehogs, meditation classes, gardening curriculums, and we also heard about more standard programmatic activities, things we expected to hear, QPR trainings, Columbia screeners, postvention protocols, these kinds of things. But we really heard from every school some of both of those, which was very exciting to hear about. Yeah, I won't go into that. Number three, we heard a gap existing in transferring Addie's Act from the district to effective programming and activities in the school buildings. We kind of expected to hear that. And there's a need to acknowledge that schools are unique and have unique contexts within districts. And so that's one of the main things we will be looking at, trying to see how schools are managing that gap and what we can learn from that. Number four, we saw, obviously we saw a lot of barriers as well in those conversations. Some of them were real solution specific, like we don't have good curriculum. We don't have a documentation system, things like that, very solution specific problems. And then of course we had lots of conversations with schools about really sticky problems, big problems, like capacity, staff turnover, community stigma, how to engage families, how to incorporate equity. Many schools identified, and this has been named a couple of times in a couple of ways in this meeting, but they identified a politically driven community opposition to suicide prevention or social emotional learning, equity inclusion, and all of that often gets in the way of suicide prevention work or makes it trickier. Schools having to figure out how to language something so that it doesn't meet opposition in the community. And then number six, there was, of course, as we love in Oregon, there was, of course, a variability across schools in terms of the trainings people are using, programs folks are using, systems. Most frequently, we heard QPR as the training being used most broadly for school staff, but we heard a lot of varying responses to the activities that folks are doing in their school buildings. We are just really at the start of this, and it's really exciting. So we look forward to keeping y'all in the loop. I didn't mention that schools are stipended for being a part of this. That is important, and I don't want to go without saying that. I was not watching the chat, so now I am.
It doesn't look like there's anything in there, Shanda, that pertains to this conversation, but do folks have any questions or thoughts or feedback or just anything for Shanda about this incredible work that's happening?
While you think about that, I will also mention the two other pieces of this. You can take the screen away. The Forward project is happening in the High Desert ESD. Whitney Schumacher is part of the leadership of that. Claire mentioned Whitney. We've invited Whitney to come. Today did not work for Whitney, but hopefully in a on another day. And that project is focused in depth, but with school districts. So it's another angle that we're really excited about. And it's all the school districts in the high desert ESD. So it's going to be a different lens. And I'm really excited about the different angles that are all being looked at in evaluation of Addie's Act. I think it's going to give us some really good understanding. And then I also mentioned that ODE was just granted, they just were awarded something called Project Aware from SAMHSA. So they'll be doing that project that will be rolling out in, I believe, 5 areas. And they also received funding to increase their school safety and prevention specialist program, which is really has a lot of overlap with Claire's team, but they are they are housed in ESDs. And those folks do suicide prevention, and they also do safety and prevention more generally. But they ODE secured funding to expand that for this coming school year. So those there'll be one in every ESD, which is also exciting. So much happening.
Any thoughts, questions about this amazing work?
Shanda, just briefly, and you may have said this in there, but is one of the ideas of these 7 different areas that they're doing it that it's not just about assessing what they're doing, but it's really helping them to build it? So that it's sort of, I guess one of the things that's exciting to me is I'd much rather attract people to exciting, wonderful work than try and force them into it. And that's what I kind of hope, is that it's going to end up with work that's so interesting that other districts will begin to say, oh, I'd like to do this. And I just really value that it's going to be, some of them are going to be at tiny schools, et cetera. Just it's so clear when we talk to like Mila and Amy that they are dealing with such a different picture in Portland than somebody would be down in Brookings. And they both have huge challenges. So anyhow, thanks.
Sandy, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sandy Mathewson, and I just wanted to say hello. I have to jump to another meeting. I am the person that Chandra was describing in Clackamas ESD, that we call ourselves the SSPWs. It doesn't matter. I do a similar job to Whitney. She's so lovely. I just adore Whitney and her daughter. Anyway, the point is, we have several trainings coming up at Clackamas ESD. Youth Save is one of those on November. All of our trainings are free. We also have an assist training that it will be happening on the 29th and 30th of September. I do have to bounce, but if you are interested in attending that at Clackamas ESD, it is free and open now. We start with schools, and if we don't fill, we open it up, and Gally has the link for that.
I was gonna say, I'm happy to put the link in the chat because Sandy just sent it to me. So if you're interested in taking the 29th and 30th assist class at Clackamas ESD for free, I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, and just one more plug. We have the best one of y'all in our region. So just wanted to put that up there for Ashley. Okay, gotta bounce. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for saying something, Sandy. I don't know if there's any other SSPSs on the call, but I appreciate you chiming in. That's so great to have you here. And yes, Annette, thank you. We are in evaluating Addie's Act. We are very much trying to take a cheerleader approach and how do we find the good stuff that's happening and call folks in to the work rather than the old shame and blame game. All right, if other folks have questions, Claire and I and Justin are really great human beings. So send us an email, but I would hate to not take the opportunity for 4 more minutes of sources, so.
All right, folks, on that note, Shanda's already keyed us up. So I'm going to hand the floor over to Liz Thorne and her crew from Sources of Strength, which if you don't know about Sources of Strength, you're about to hear all about it. It's an amazing program. It's really one of the few upstream resiliency programs for our young people. So Liz Thorne and your team, take it away.
Well, thank you, Gally. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging in. I know we've been in front of the screen for a number of hours. I'm super grateful and thankful to have you all here. Like Gally said, my name is Liz. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the director of Matchstick Consulting. And I have the immense privilege to get to be one of the humans who helps bring Sources of Strength programming to schools and youth serving systems, kindergarten through higher ed, alongside as part of the Big River programs that Jill mentioned earlier. So we are one of the funded Big River programs supported by Oregon Health Authority. I'm here with my team. I would love for them to have a chance to unmute and introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with Carrie. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello. My name is Carrie. I am a peer educator with Matchstick Consulting, and my pronouns are they, them. I'll go ahead and pass it on to Kahea, I believe.
Yeah, love it.
Ready. My name is Kahea Reichman. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a statewide trainer with Sources of Strength secondary model, meaning I travel all around the state of Oregon, especially these days, have been traveling all around the state of Oregon and training middle, high schools, higher ed in our model. And I will pass it on over to Sky.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sky McDonald. I use they, them pronouns, and I am a new statewide trainer with Matchstick Consulting. And yeah, so I get to do the fun job of training schools, middle school, high school, higher ed, all around Oregon. I will pass it over to Julian.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julian. My pronouns are they, he, and I'm also a statewide trainer. So I'm on a lovely team with everyone, but our team is Kahea and Sky, and we get to travel a lot, and it's very fun, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you. I'll pass it on to Darcy. I can't see everyone.
Yeah, I'm out there in the universe somewhere. Hi, everybody. I'm Darcy Brown. I am I use she, her pronouns. I am the elementary SEL specialist. And so my focus is on upstream prevention in the elementary setting. And I support the statewide rollout of elementary sources K-6 curriculum. And I'll pass it to Bianca.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Bianca Karjalainen, and I use she, her pronouns. And I am the program assistant at Matchstick. Excited to be here with you all this morning. I'm passing it back to Liz.
Yeah, thank you. And Bianca, if you could pause the slide share because we'll just chat here for a minute. I know there's a lot of familiar faces in here, folks who were at the schools committee in June. This will be a similar familiar presentation to you all, but also with some new information. But I'm just curious, maybe in the chat or if your camera's on, you can use your fingers. I want to get a sense of folks' awareness of Sources of Strength. So we'll go fist to 5, fist or 0 is I know nothing about Sources of Strength. This is the first time I'm hearing of it. What is it? Oh my goodness, Grace. I'm so sorry. I totally jumped in and forgot to have you introduce yourself. Let me pause. Grace, please introduce yourself.
You are totally fine, Liz. My camera has to be off. Wi-Fi issues. My name is Grace Emhoff. I'm a student at George Fox University in Newburgh, Oregon, and I'm an intern with Sources of Strength, focusing on higher ed.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you. Thank you. So fist to 5, I know nothing about Sources of Strength. 5, I am a trainer. I have been to a training. I am currently implementing Sources of Strength. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, drop it in the chat. Use your hand. Let me know what you know. So we've got pretty high level of awareness. I see a fist. I see some 3s and 1s and 4s. Okay, fabulous. Great. You're right where you need to be. So what we're going to do for our time, and I'm going to be real mindful of time because folks need to get about their Friday. We're going to give a real brief overview of what the Sources of Strength model is for both elementary and middle school, high school, higher ed. And then we're going to take a peek at what it looked like last year, where we've been. And then we'll also share where we're going and how you all can get engaged and become part of it. And if you want to learn more, we are having our first Zoom info session where we gather on Zoom and talk more in depth about sources, answer questions next Thursday from 8 to 9 in the morning. I just dropped the link to register for that in the chat. There's also a recorded version on our website. So there's lots of ways to find out more information if you're still left with questions after this. So before we jump into it, in true Sources of Strength fashion, we really believe in the power of play. We believe in the power of play to connect, to spend time in joy, and also to just laugh a bit. So I'm going to pass it over to Sky to lead us through a game. I will say, if you are able to do camera on, this game is much best enjoyed as I think is a sentence. It's happening today. It's best enjoyed with camera on. If your camera off, there's a chat adaptation too. So Sky, take it away.
Hello, folks. My name is Sky, and we are going to play a game called Moose or Mouse. So what we're going to do, and this is why it's easiest with your camera on, because then you can just use your body to show your choice. Otherwise, you can indicate in the chat your option. So I'm going to bend down like this out of the camera, and I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, moose or mouse, and I will appear with my choice. If you match me, you stay in. If you do not match me, so if I chose moose, you chose mouse, then you are out. Thank you for playing, and turn your camera off. And that's how we know who is still in. All right, and so you can also drop moose or mouse into the chat. And if my colleagues could help me keep an eye on that, that would be great. Okay, cool. Also, we're playing for a prize. So a prize will be mailed to you if you win. All right, any questions before we get started? Okay, cool. So moose or mouse? Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna bend down. Moose or mouse? Ow. 3, 2, 1, here I come. I'm a mouse. I'm a mouse. If you're a moose, you are out. Thank you for playing. Ooh, I got a lot of folks. All right, does not look like we have anyone playing in the chat. Okay. All right, here we go. Moose or mouse? All right, 3, 2, 1. Moose or mouse? I'm coming back a mouse.
Oh, the double mouse. That does it
Double
every
mouse.
time. Ooh.
All right.
Hunter,
You chose
Brittany,
moose.
Mike,
Thank
Justin,
you.
Gordon, you're still in. Carrie's still in.
All right. Here we
Kahea's
go.
still
Ready?
in. Mary.
Okay, moose or mouse? 3, 2, 1. I'm a moose. I know, I was thinking about going the triple and then I decided not. All right, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 folks. Oh, 3 folks left. All right, ready? Moose
Brittany
or mouse?
versus Justin. Here we go. This
All
is
right,
for
here
the
we
prize.
are. 3, 2, 1.
And Hunter.
Okay, down
Oh,
to 2.
bye, Justin.
Okay, ready? Last one. Moose or mouse? 3, 2, 1. I'm a moose. Brittany, you are the lucky winner. All right. Great job. Thank you, everyone, for playing. I'm going to turn it back over to Liz. We will contact you in the chat. We'll private message you, okay?
Yeah. Cool. Fun. So we're going to spend a couple minutes just doing a brief overview of elementary and secondary sources models. So I think we're going to share some slides, and I'm going to pass it over to Darcy.
I mean, in the spirit of moose and mouse, I have to share some fun fact that I learned a couple days ago, that there is actually a small moose population that is making its way into Oregon, and I think over in the Wallowas. So we have moose in Oregon. Super exciting. Okay, let's see. So the elementary model, I know a lot of you have heard, so I'm going to give just a high-level overview about the foundations. And so the K-6 curriculum is that tier 1, it's that universal curriculum, which is why a lot of schools are utilizing it as part of their ADDIES Act, that prevention piece, that tier 1 work. And the curriculum really centers belonging, it centers connection in the classroom. And I think what really is emphasized and what I appreciate about it is really that resiliency building and emotional fluency in terms of language for our youngest students. And the goal is really to build and bolster healthy coping strategies, not just like in that 30-minute SEL lesson, but like how can it live throughout the day and throughout the school community so that we're practicing those skills alongside the students and normalizing help seeking. And so that looks, you know, from as young as kinder, that can look normalizing help seeking, like asking for help for your homework, all the way up to asking for help when you're worried about yourself or a close friend. So with the 3-6, you'll see I highlighted those first 4 units. Those are really those foundational units, and students, like, they learn and practice and review that year after year. So we're really, again, emphasizing that, like, that we're practicing those skills. Those are not, those are things that we need to learn and relearn and practice. They're ongoing and they're alive in our, you know, in our educational experience at school. And I think what's really been cool, having, since this is piloted in 2020-21 school year, is we've seen the districts and schools look at this resource and utilize it in such different ways and have engaged in wellness across their schools, whether they're just using it as for staff wellness initiatives, like we've seen some large districts do, or whether they're bringing it to the students and fully rolling it out K through 6. Or we have some schools that are like, we have some SEL programming that's really working for us, but we appreciate the wheel. And so we're trying to find ways to incorporate it. And so it's really been like a living learning project since its rollout. And then with K2 that is rolling out currently, like right now, hot off the press and in boxes and showing up in schools as we speak, is really exciting. We have a lot of that core, you know, those core initiatives and learning targets around building connection, but it's all of the things that are happening in those primary classrooms anyway, those learning about routines and pro-social skills like sharing and collaborating. But it's in this really, really great lessons that are sources and sources informed and strength-based. And we've just seen some really good feedback from both the pilot at the kindergarten level, but also the schools that have started to really engage in the work already. So we're just super excited to see that happening for our youngest kids. And so for coaching, this is what you know, we've really tried to emphasize with schools, is the power of bringing your coaches not only to become deliverers of the content, like teaching the lessons, but also reflect on ways that they can engage their staff. We know the importance of bringing the work not only to the students, but with the adults, and to practice wellness alongside one another, to model wellness strategies, is one of the most powerfully impactful things that's happening in our school community. So we get really excited when we see that positive culture change happening with both that, you know, the staff wellness initiatives as alongside the student lessons. And before I transition to Kahea to talk about secondary, I always like to show these really great adaptations to the wheel. And these are for primary students, so that, you know, we can engage and make it more accessible, not only for our pre-readers, but also we had a lot of feedback from folks that were supporting students that were English language learners, and that the visuals were really supportive of their accessibility. So these are some really great options. And I think that I see folks using this not just with the kinder through second, but also bringing it to their 3rd, 4th, 5th grade classrooms as well. And Kahea, you've got.
Yeah, would love to take over.
Thank you.
So Darcy just went over how we engage with sometimes lovingly called littles, K through 6 in our curriculum. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we engage with students and staff at the secondary level. And by secondary, we mean middle school, high school, and then higher ed has a little bit different of a model, because everybody in that space is an adult. And so we changed some language a little bit to make it fit better. But I'll talk to you a little bit about the core pillars of the Sources program. You'll see this math equation up here on the board. I
I always say I got a degree in like the humanities, and so I'm not a math person, but this one is pretty easily understandable. So we start with our adult advisors. These are the adult staff members in the building. They don't just have to be mental health staff. They can be any adult who works in the school building who is caring, connected, and positive. And we don't mean positive like toxic positivity, Pollyanna, everything is all right. It's more about, I believe as an adult, a human working in a building, that culture can change around mental health, change is possible, and that young people have power to use their voice and impact the culture around mental health in our schools. Those adult advisors get trained by us, and then they come together with their peer leaders. Peer leaders are a diverse group of young folks, both in diversity, like traditional demographic diversity, but also in social diversity. Young folks that feel very connected at school versus young folks that do not feel connected at all to school, come together in a peer leader team. And these young people use their voice, their culture, their words, their social media, their voices to talk about the concepts that we talk about, like getting connected to a trusted adult, how to connect to hope, help, and strength in your life, in their schools. These folks come together, they form a community of strength that is diverse, inclusive, and it's collaborative. So they work together. Sources is not meant to come into a school and take over everything, every other good thing you're also doing. So we talk a lot with Sources teams when we train at schools about how can we collaborate with your LGBTQ Alliance? How can we collaborate with your Black Student Union to come together and do all of these really good, affirming, and empowering work, and add some Sources language into that work. These folks come together, they do strategic messaging campaigns. I'll go over some examples of what campaigns have been in the last year in Oregon. If you can go right back to this previous slide, Bianca, sorry. We'll do that next. Short preview. These are all school activities or events that encourage young folks to engage with this work, interact with it, and apply strength to their own lives. And we have seen through randomized controlled trials about Sources of Strength nationally that this results in positive culture change through a process of positive social norming. Now we can go on to the next slide and talk campaigns. So these are some campaigns from around our state last year. These are all young folks in Oregon, which is really exciting to have enough examples on our slide to be able to create a whole slide deck around them. Just going from left to right, and on the left, that's Metropolitan Learning Center in Portland. In the middle, that is a peer leader in Eugene at Sheldon High School. And then on the right, that is Scenic Middle School down in Central Point. We want to go to the next slide. The two images on the left are at Ben Tech Academy. Those like leaves and wings on those butterflies are all interactable parts of that wall display, meaning that students were challenged to like come up to a table at lunch and write down a source of strength in their own life on their own little sticky note leaf, and then add it to the tree so it's interactable. Up there at the top right-hand side, that is a school in Springfield, the Academy of Arts and Academics, or A3, and they created this wall display where students shared how they help themselves with different emotions like sadness, anxiety, and anger. And then down on the bottom right, Liz, can you remind me where that school is?
Yeah, this is in Vale Middle School.
Oh, yes.
And they did a round table like stations, like every table was a different wedge of the wheel, and young folks did kind of like a scavenger hunt of how they are interacting with and exploring different parts of their wheel at school.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. And then we also attended this really cool Sources of Strength Wellness Fair in Lebanon last year. That's me and Carrie and their service dog Calypso at this wellness fair on that slide. But this was a fair that Lebanon School District put together where all of those booths are different community resources around all sorts of different parts that people can get connected to. So like housing resources, monetary resources, after school clubs or activities, tabled at this event. And then they also brought in like bounce houses and cotton candy, and the local fire department made hot dogs. It was a whole event. It was really, really cool, and all centered around ideas around sources of strength and connecting to your strength in your life. We also, if we can go to the next slide, Bianca, thank you. I will pass it over to Darcy to talk about REACH.
Yeah, I'd just like to kind of highlight where we've been and where we're headed. And so last year we trained 147 elementary coaches, 54 schools implementing, and incredibly that reached over 20,000 students statewide. And we just want to also recognize that we believe that is an underestimate. But I get really excited for kind of looking ahead and looking at this year and recognizing some of the barriers that were taking place in schools last year and over the last couple of years. There's already so much energy and excitement. Even it's barely September and we've already have 27 new schools that are planning to implement in 22-23. And then we also have 26 elementary schools that were implementing 3-6 last year that are expanding into K2. And I think for me, that's such a testament for their experiences at the 3-6 and how they hope to have this work grow and really bring that prevention, the upstream prevention further and further upstream to our youngest kiddos. And then
Yeah, me. So at the secondary level, so we support this work in a couple of different ways. And at the elementary model, it looks different. At the secondary model, it looks different. So coaches attend sponsored coaches trainings that Darcy helps support. And then they go and support implementation at their school and receive curriculum at no cost to the school after they develop an implementation plan with us. At the secondary level, it's a little bit different because we have a team of statewide trainers that can go and train at their school. And we also are really keen to continue building local capacity for this work. And this is by training local trainers. And so last year in 2021-2022, we trained 41 new local provisional trainers, and they represent across like 10 different counties. And then we received 55 implementation plans from schools. And so that means schools that are like signing on and training and have a plan and are going to meet with peer leaders across 14 different counties. And so that translates into training 355 adult advisors, 1,070 individual peer leaders, and our estimated student reach is around 45,227 students. And we got our reach numbers based on Department of Education school enrollment numbers. Because Sources of Strength is intended to be a population level impact, we feel like we can really justify that the intention is that every single student in that school is feeling the impact of their work. And just like Darcy said, we actually think this is an undercount because what's not included here is the Lebanon Sources Fair, where hundreds of people went through and experienced that. Also the trainings we've been doing with youth serving organizations like Beaverton YMCA and Boys and Girls Club of Portland, training youth serving staff on strengths-based work with young folks and how to get connected to help in their spaces as well. And as of today, September 9th, we've already received and approved 43 implementation plans for schools across the state in the secondary model. So we are well on our way to going far above and beyond what we did last year. This is a peek at where we were location-wise last year at the elementary, secondary, and university levels. The size of that dot is relative to the number of sites in that county. And the color of that dot is looking at the different programs that they were accessing. And I'm happy, we're going really quick here. We're happy to give more in-depth information. If you're like, who's doing it in my county? Reach out, we'll drop my email in the chat and we can get you that information. And then what's really exciting, because you probably noticed in that previous slide, like, ooh, there's swaths of the state that we haven't touched yet. But what is exciting is when we're looking at sites, this slide, schools who we are in active conversation with that are planning for implementation, we start to get a lot more coverage over into the northeastern part of our state. And that's to say there's still a lot of work to do to connect schools and communities to this really good work. And that is where we hope you all can come in as well. And then this is just, again, looking at to date where we're really rooting in and building local capacity with trainers and coaches. Again, the size of the dot is relative to the number of folks there. It's really exciting. There's been some local investment in sources of strength at the county level. Lane County just hosted their own training for trainers. And so there's a huge new crop of folks coming out of a Lane County training that just happened in August. And we're partnering really closely with the Forward project that was mentioned earlier in Deschutes County. So there's some really cool, innovative local resourcing that's happening that's super exciting. And then again, just to zoom back out, like we can get caught up in numbers and reach and counties and where we are, but it's really important that behind every single dot is a human. And so this quote is from one of our peer leader focus groups that was held in the spring, that was co-facilitated and created by our peer educator team. And so just to read, when they were asked what has been like, what do they think has been the impact of sources at their school and on them? This person said, it started conversations with teachers and students, big, clear, thought-provoking that make you go, okay. Stuff going on around school that has been a shift. We have positive messaging out. I've noticed more clubs and students being able to kind of voice things they care about. There's more encouragement and correct and accurate information going around because people feel like that's acceptable to do. So that is what we're all about, right? Creating spaces where you can ask for help, that is okay, that is acceptable, and there's accurate information for where you can do that. And these are pictures of peer leaders from all of our trainings, some of our trainings last year, from East County and Multnomah County to Paisley to Siuslaw to Columbia County to Crater High School. And we're just so grateful for all the circles and spaces we get to be in. And another really exciting thing we get to do is our annual Sources Showcase. I'm going to pass it back to Kahea to share about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, because I'm also eyes on the clock here for you all to get out right at 12:30. We have an annual showcase every year, which is a celebration of peer leaders, adult advisors, and teams that are doing really good work around Oregon. And so this is a list of all of the young people that we and adults and teams that we got to the honor of honoring in our showcase last year, or at least it was this year, but last school year. And we'll drop a link in the chat to our website. You can watch a video where we put together a compilation of all of the different winners and all the really amazing and ways they're showing up for their communities. It is so inspiring, and I would grab some tissues if you're in a vulnerable place, because it is very, very, very heartwarming, and really gives me a lot of hope for our state, and especially the young folks that are making differences in their communities. I'm going to pass it really quick on over to our peer educator, or one of our peer educators. We had 3 peer educators this year, Galena, Carrie, and Dev, who are on the screen right now. Dev and Galena have graduated high school and are off to college, and we know that they are going to make big, big waves wherever they end up. But Carrie, lucky for us, has decided to stay on with us for the time being. And so we are really excited to talk about what our peer educator team is getting up to. And I'll pass it over to you, Carrie, to talk more about that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm very glad to be here. So I've been working on a couple of projects. 2 weeks ago, I finished what I called a peer leader introduction video, which is just a video that we show to young folks who are going to come into a Sources of Strength training, where they can learn a little bit about what they're doing in Sources of Strength and get encouraged, and just be able to connect a little bit more with what Sources of Strength is. The other thing I've been working on this last few weeks is accessibility issues within Sources of Strength, particularly with the games that we play in Sources of Strength, and creating a booklet that has different game adaptions and accommodations so that people who experience different disabilities can still participate equally with everyone else. And it also has considerations such as service dog laws and neurodivergent considerations in it as well.
Fabulous. Thank you, Carrie. And then we'll just wrap up real quick in this last couple of minutes of how y'all can get involved at the elementary level with coaches trainings and upcoming T4Ts. Darcy, you want to talk about our upcoming elementary coaches trainings?
I'd love to. Thanks, Liz. So we kind of did something a little different that we've done in the past, which is just schedule our year out so that folks can anticipate and plan. And our hope is to really target areas of the state that we want to grow more in. And so we will be in Deschutes County, we'll be in Sun River in November. April, we plan to be in Pendleton. And then in May, we will be somewhere on the Northwest coast. We haven't quite figured out exactly where that'll be. But, you know, just in sharing the opportunity, we appreciate the help kind of getting the word out. And I think, you know, there's kind of always a space for me to share testimonials, but in the interest of time, I'll just share like kind of my distilling all of the feedback we've gotten both at elementary and secondary is really that, you know, schools as we've named can be hard places to create change, and there are a lot of barriers, and there are challenges that are unique to the school setting. And the thing I continually hear back about sources is like, it feels like it's meeting the need of the moment, like right now when we need it, which is so unusual for schools. And so I just want to highlight that both for elementary and secondary. And then for secondary, we also have the opportunity, and we invite you to be part of our sources community in any capacity, in all capacities, whether that's just inviting others. But we do have a T for T coming up, advanced skills in February 27th through March, and that will be in the Medford area. And I know we're dropping some links to those interest forms, both for the elementary and for the T for T. And then also, I believe was named this earlier, but we also have an info session coming up on September 15th from 8 to 9. And we'll drop the link to that. We encourage you to invite anyone that really wants to know more or would like more space for questions. Please join us. We'll be talking about both elementary and secondary.
Phew, we did it. Oh, I'm going to drop my email in the chat as well. I should spell my name correctly. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Love to connect, answer more individual questions. I know we've got 2 minutes, so I'll pass it back to Gali and the crew. And just thanks again for all of you and for the work that you do every day in service to folks in our state. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much, Liz and the team at Matchstick who are doing this incredible work. It's incredible to hear about all the things that you are doing and how many folks are involved and the movement that's happening in our community. So really, thank you for sharing all the things that are happening. It's a great way to end our meeting today. So on that note, folks, it is 12:29 and we want to be mindful because my internet I think is unstable. Are you all able to hear me?
Yep, you're back.
I'm back. Okay, I'm going to stay off camera. So be mindful of your time. It's 12:29. Thank you for spending your morning with us this morning. Thank you to all the people who did presentations about all the amazing work that's happening all over the state. You are greatly, greatly appreciated. I wish.
Ending the meeting with a time tube.
I know she was saying something gracious to all of you. So
be well, everyone.
Be well. Take